In celebration of beautiful spring, let's open up the windows, make some delicious food, maybe sew something, and make our homes the most comforting place on earth. A lot of mornings I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, holding a baby or two, and struggling to get started on all the work that must be done. Usually when I put on some jeans or a dress, braid my hair, put it up, curl it, do something with it, and just get ready for the day. Doesn't mean I even need to put on any makeup, but I feel so much more put together, and it's my unofficial start to the day whenever I take this step to get out of my pajamas and get ready. I have so much homemaking to do because we have actually been out of town for a week. I'm just getting back into it. So the apron is going on. It's beautiful weather outside. While we were gone, everything turned from brown to green. A few flowers even popped open while we were gone. It's so interesting to leave during this crucial week when spring has sprung. This is about a month ahead of schedule. Last year we did vacation during this exact same week, and it was totally winter when we came home. The chickens went crazy while we were gone because of the additional light. They're almost all laying now, and we have a lot of hens. My sister, who took care of the farm, and her husband, they brought home some eggs, but they still left so many for us. So I'm cleaning eggs this morning, stocking up the groceries because we have an empty fridge and pantry. I'm just getting my bearings about me. So we just got back from Florida, and it was the most beautiful oceanfront location. It felt like a whole week of summer right at the end of winter. We spent endless hours watching seagulls dive for fish, turtles poke their heads just above the water surface, and gathered up a pretty impressive shell collection that never stood a chance of fitting in our luggage to bring home. We did bring home quite a few, but definitely not all of them. We even saw several sharks, which I wasn't too alarmed by because the locals told us that those were just spinner sharks and they're fine. We found a local fair, which was super fun. We didn't know it was going to be going on. So that was an unexpected surprise. In our area, when there's fairs, they're so crowded that you almost can't even stand it. But this one wasn't, so that was fun. We walked barefoot in the sand back and forth to the cottage for sourdough sandwiches. Yes, I found sourdough locally. I also found raw milk. We wore kids out so much that they ended up napping in the sand under towels at the end of it. Memories were made, but every time I come home from a trip, I cannot wait to make my home. I just want to get my hands in sourdough, flip an egg on a well-seasoned cast iron skillet, and tuck freshly washed laundry into the proper drawers and armoires instead of one oversized family suitcase. We are home now. We are getting back into our schedule. The kids are getting back into their school schedule. Recently, we started incorporating IXL for a portion of our homeschool, which happens to be the partner of today's video. I believe that learning is a lifestyle, so we don't have an 8-hour classroom setting like a traditional school, but there are certain core basics that everyone needs to learn. And having a program like IXL really helps with each one of my kids to figure out where they are, what they need to learn in those core subjects like math and language arts. IXL offers lessons starting from pre-K up to 12th grade. So with kids at multiple different stages, I love using something that can tailor specifically to their current needs. IXL has video tutorials, detailed explanations, and learning games to guide each child in the way that they learn best while meeting them at their level. IXL's content library empowers kids to explore their interests and take charge of their learning journey. I am a believer that kids have to be personally invested in their own education to see lasting fruit from it. That's why we've always taken an interest-led approach in our home, and I love that IXL can support us in this. I love that I can set up a profile for each of my school-age kids, and then they can explore the recommendations for their grade level and based on what they still need help in. So each child can do an assessment and then use that as a jumping off point for some of those core subjects. They also keep parents in the loop by sending out reports. This makes it really nice so you can see what they have worked on, how many questions they've answered, how much time they've spent, what skills they've made progress in, and then how much they've practiced in a certain category. IXL is offering Farmhouse on Boon viewers a sweet deal. You can get access to all of the core subjects for 20% off your first month or year with my link in the description box below. Family memberships start at only $7.69 a month. Again, thanks so much IXL for partnering with us on today's video. On the second to last day of our trip, Luke took a bunch of the older kids on a walk. I had a couple of kids. I think he took the toddler, the older kids. I had a couple of the younger boys, plus Victor was sleeping in his pack and play, which that's a new development. He now sleeps in his pack and play, which is so cool. Anyways, I was cleaning up the Airbnb, doing some laundry, doing some dishes, trying to get it ready because we needed to check out the next day. And I was really loving it. And I'm not making that up just for YouTube. I'm not just saying that. Truly, I just wanted to be back in my element. I really do love making a home tidy, making it comfortable, making delicious food, expressing my creativity through the work of a homemaker. I enjoy relaxing. I was very much looking forward to the trip, but by the end of it, I just had that feeling of, you know what, I want to go home, work on a few projects around here, do some sewing, meal plan, cook in a kitchen that is set up. I find it so hard to work in someone else's kitchen. Now, usually an Airbnb, it's set up for vacations. They're not stocked and ready for a from scratch, large family type of situation. So we love taking kids to see the ocean, see other places. But I'm always so happy to get back to the convenience of the place that I have made work out in every way perfect for us over the years. And it just makes it hard to ever want to leave. Luke and I always talk about when we get home how going away almost is worth it just to have that feeling when you come home of, wow, this place is amazing. It's so convenient. It has all of our creature comforts, all of our ferments, our healthy meat. Everything's easy. It really makes you see the value in what you are doing. You're creating this space for your family that has that feeling. And it doesn't take a lot, but it does take intentionality and planning and care. My sister brought over milk from the place that we are currently both getting raw milk, and she put that in my fridge while we were gone. I am putting some meat that was out in the deep freezer into the fridge to thaw out, pulling my water kefir back out of the fridge to get it back fermenting at room temperature so we can enjoy water kefir. This morning, I got some milk kefir going already on the counter there behind me. I fed my sourdough starter. This is something that you really can only do if you spend time every single day in your kitchen, but it is so enjoyable and also just so good for our health. I notice a clear difference between when I'm regularly consuming ferments versus when I am not. So the water kefir, the way that it works is you basically put sugar water with water kefir grains. The kefir grains consume the sugar and create a fermented product. And then since all of the good bacteria from those little grains, not all of it, but a lot of it made it into the fermented water, if you will, the fermented sugar water, you can then take that, strain it off, and what is already in there, the good bacteria, will then do a second ferment. It'll consume the sugars in a juice, such as grape juice. And whenever you put it into a bottle that has an airtight lid, it'll create that bubbly soda-like end product. What's cool about all this stuff, milk kefir, sourdough, water kefir, even sauerkraut, it can all be paused in the refrigerator for a good long while. So if you're on a trip for a week, 2 weeks, once the water kefir was fermented, I just left the grains right in it, put some lids on, put it in the fridge. I had some bottles that had done a second ferment, put those in the fridge, put my sourdough in the fridge, my milk kefir grains in the fridge, and it all pops right back out, ready to go. My sister and brother-in-law take care of the farm while we're away. We kind of exchange that favor for each other. And while I was on our trip, I was thinking about so many things I wanted to do when I got home. I ordered some linen for an apron I wanted to work on, a few things for our basement grocery store, which you saw last week. I had to apologize to my brother-in-law because there were so many packages. I told him that this is not normal. I don't normally get this many packages. There were just a lot of things I was excited to work on. This is the energy of spring in a way. I get a lot of energy once the sun is out a lot later. The days are longer, they're warmer, everything is green and beautiful, there are flowers. I start to get excited about gardening, about baking fresh spring foods. And that is why I think I had so many ideas on my mind. I wanted to make an apron very similar to one that I already have. This one just came off of Amazon, but I wanted to have a bit of a thicker strap in the back. And so I'm measuring all the different shapes and sizes and straps and whatnot on this apron to mimic it. Now, I did record what I was doing so that I could show you how to make this even if you don't have this exact apron. But of course, it does not have to be perfect. Essentially with an apron, you have a little top part, couple of straps, and then the skirt part. So it's not super difficult, but I knew that if I replicated one I already had, that I would get it right as far as fit goes. So that's why I opted to go with that. But I will be sharing all of the measurements in case you want to make something really similar. Okay, for this apron, I did 2 pieces, 25¼ inches by 6 inches wide for the crossover straps, and then 2 pieces, 93 inches by 3 inches for the band across the middle. I'll show you what I'm doing with that later here. For the skirt piece, 24½ inches wide by 55½ inches wide. Then the top piece, it kind of angles out. So it's 9½ inches at the top and then 11¾ at the bottom. And then the length is 11 inches from top to bottom. You want 2 of those. Now the way that I made that is by folding it in half and then marking where half of the 9½ at the top would be and then angling it out to that 11.75, if that makes sense. So I made a 11.75 by 11 inch rectangle, fold it in half, and that's how I got that little angle. You don't have to do that. It cannot do that at all. It just makes it a little bit more fitting up around the neck. It can just be a rectangle. So the steps for making this apron, I put the 2 pieces right sides together for the top pieces, the little angled one I was just telling you about. I sewed around all 3 sides and then turned it right side out and then realized that I should tuck the straps in. So I took that back out to pull these straps through like you're seeing here. I just use a little seam ripper and then pin them in. For the strap pieces, those are the ones that were 6 inches wide by 25¼ I folded those in half, sewed all the way around, pulled them right side out, and then top stitched them. Now, whenever I went to put them into the apron piece there at the top, I realized that it would be way too wide, and so it would just sit like in my neck. So I put a little pinch pleat in each side. That would help them to be narrower where they actually come out of the top apron piece, but then also have that wide cross in the back, which is what I was going for here. I like to do top stitching. Now, my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, came in while I was making this project and she was like, why on earth did you use white thread? And so I know a lot of you are gonna say the same thing. And the real reason, my big excuse, is that I just didn't have dark green thread. I do highly recommend that if you're gonna take the time to do this project to get the right thread, but I already had this on my plan for today. I got the fabric, I got all my sewing stuff out, all I had was white thread, and I just said to myself, okay, this is an apron, it's not the end of the world, it's not like a dress I'm gonna be wearing out. So I know some of you will really be bothered by that, but I feel okay with it. But just know that if you do feel that way, you are in agreement with my 15-year-old daughter who also sews. She's a very good sewer. She makes very beautiful things that she can actually wear out and about. So I'm at that stage in life where I have a child
that is old enough to critique my sewing, and she's right. It's not that she's wrong here. So for the long pieces, these are the ones that are 93 inches by 3. That's the band around the middle. Now you might say, why not 93 inches long by 6 wide, fold it in half instead of pressing the ends in and meeting them all up? The reason for that is I wanted to sandwich in the straps, I wanted to sandwich in the skirt and the top piece. So that's the way I decided to do it, was to make these long bands 93 inches long by 3 inches wide, and then press the long ends up about a 1/4 inch so that they would lay on top of each other and look like it was folded in half once you top stitch it, but actually be open so I could tuck everything in. For the skirt piece, I made that 24.5 inches long by 55.5 inches wide, and then I put a gathering stitch in it and gathered it until it was about 36 inches. Again, I was just going off of my other apron. It gathered to about 36 inches. Of course, before doing that, I hemmed around all 3 sides. So the 2 sides of the skirt piece and the bottom of the skirt piece. And then that raw edge there at the top is where I did the gathering stitch. Now you can see I have this long band that's open on both sides. I'm tucking my skirt piece into that, making sure to find the middle first so that it's centered on the long band. And then I'm going to tuck my top piece that has already been finished, has those strap pieces in it, in the top part of that. And then I'll cross my straps over, line them up kind of with the outside edges of the apron, and sew those in to the top part as well whenever I go to sew in the top part of the apron. So everything gets all tucked in, all finished. I top stitch everything. I'm top stitching the band so that way I can get it put back together, since it wasn't ever folded. It was just pressed over and lined up. So the top stitching will secure everything in there. I'll get this top piece pinned in and centered, the strap pieces pinned in and centered, finish off those outside strap pieces, and then I will work on the pockets, because every spring apron needs pockets. Whether you're going to go to the garden and get a handful of herbs to put in there, or for me, the reason I love aprons and the reason they're so practical is whenever I'm around the house and I see a Lego or a Nerf dart or a pencil, so many random things, socks, that's another one, that are out of place. I wear my apron all day. I use it as sort of like a towel whenever I'm in the kitchen so I don't rub everything all over my clothes. And then I also gather things that need to get put in the right spot. If I'm upstairs and then I see something like a spoon, I'll put it in my little apron pocket. And then when I come downstairs, I'll have my battery, my spoon. I'm just naming all the random stuff that seems to get displaced, misplaced around our house. And I just put that in those apron pockets. So the way that I'm doing the pockets, I'm pressing the top edge over and hemming it. I didn't show that here because I think I first kind of forgot about that because I was talking to one of my kids. But you're going to want to take the top part of the pocket, press it over twice so that you're hemming it, and then press the other 3 sides over. You don't have to worry about doing it twice because the raw edges will just be inside your pocket. Top stitch those on, and that's the end of it. And I really love the way it turned out. I think it would look better if I had green thread, to be honest. But ultimately, it's an apron. This thing is going to get worn out. I go through aprons like you wouldn't believe because we use things hard here. If I have flour on my hands, I just rub it on my apron. I think that they're so practical and I enjoy wearing them, and it sure doesn't hurt when they're pretty too. One of my favorite things when I do a sewing project is being a little bit competitive with myself about how much, or how little I should say, waste. And so I'm really proud of this tiny little pile. I bought 2 yards of the linen and it came in 2 separate packages, as you saw, because I kind of wasn't sure how much it would take. Well, I got it done in 1 yard. So I'm super proud of that, with just a tiny little bit of scrap here and there left over. So now I have another whole yard that I could make maybe some linen tea towels for springtime, or maybe I could do a farmer's market tote of some kind. A lot of options, more linen, and it matches my kitchen because I have these linen check curtains. It all just feels very fresh and springy. That's why I went for the green. So now I'm going to put this apron to use and do some sourdough bread, something that you see me do in just about every video because it's always happening here in our home. I did just feed this starter this morning, but it's already ready. I put it in my warmest location in my house that I could make bread this afternoon. Now, I've made bread every single way possible here on this channel all whole grain, all white flour, half and half of each, some einkorn flour, some kamut. Lately, my favorite way, and this changes all the time. I get in phases of doing one thing and that's what we use for a while, and then I'll do a different thing. But right now, my favorite bread is half whole grain, half all purpose. This gives that balance of being very delicious, classic sourdough bread, but then also having whole grain. Now, I did several stretch and folds throughout the afternoon and evening. I'm going to do one final one here, get the dough nice and smooth, and then put a wet tea towel over it. Let it sit in the pantry overnight. As long as the spot for your bulk fermentation isn't too warm, you can get away with 12, even 18 hours. That's what I'm going to do here. So next morning, I am going to make sourdough hot cross buns. This is perfect for Easter. It's a traditional Easter food. Of course, it's delicious. So first, I'm soaking some raisins in water, and then I'm going to mix up my hot cross buns dough, which is over on the Farmhouse on Boone website. So if you go to farmhouseonboone.com, search sourdough hot cross buns, you'll see it there. But essentially, I'm doing some all-purpose, some bread flour. I have a whole grain bread flour, so this won't be as light and fluffy, but it'll still be good enough. Some nutmeg, allspice, and cinnamon, some salt. And then the sourdough starter, I still haven't put it in the fridge from yesterday, so it has been sitting out for about 24 hours now, so it's not at its most active state ever, but that is totally fine. It'll still rise enough. There will still be enough yeast in here to make it rise. I've done this a lot. I'll even pull starter right out of the fridge. All fine. It does not have to be at its most peak stage to make some really great creations. That's something that I've really noticed over the years, is that people seem to make a really big deal about having the starter at its most peak, bubbly, active stage to make something, when in reality, I hardly notice a difference from whether it's really active or when it's almost like discard. I'm going to mix that all up, let it sit on the back of the stove, and do some stretch and folds throughout the morning. You'll notice it's super shaggy, not pliable at all, but as the stretch and folds happen throughout the morning, it will get more glossy. It won't get as glossy as this bread dough here because it's a little bit of a different consistency, but it'll definitely be less shaggy. So this dough has been sitting out now since yesterday afternoon. It is now mid-morning, so quite a while. It's very bubbly, but it is not over fermented. If you ever get to the point where your bread is like, you can't even handle it, it's like glue, that means it over ferments. But I know at this stage of the game what my kitchen can handle. Now, as it gets warmer, which it's been getting warmer, I'll have to watch it, because when we keep our house at about 78 degrees in the summer, I don't let the air conditioner get it much lower than that. It will ferment a lot more quickly. So sourdough is something where I can give you a guide, I can teach you, I can tell you how it should feel, but I can't give you exact times because I don't know what the temperature's like in your home. I don't know if you have a warming spot like I do here in the middle of my stove, but you will get the hang of it. I'm going to let it sit. I'm not even going to put it in the fridge. I want to bake it today. So I'm doing no cold ferment, just going straight into the baking after it sits and rises in this warm spot. We have homeschool co-op tomorrow, and we usually bring sandwiches every week. So I'm baking both loaves of bread, so that way we can have one for use today and tomorrow, and then one for our sandwiches tomorrow. That's why I'm baking both. Sometimes what I'll do instead is I will just put one in the refrigerator to bake tomorrow and then bake one today. But I know that we'll have a high need right now for some bread. My daughter here is making sourdough pie crust. It is our favorite pie crust because it uses sourdough discard, or whatever you have, quite honestly. We have discard here today, I guess you could say, because it has been fermenting for about 24 hours. But it always comes together and it rolls out really nice. We have very consistent results with it. Again, you can get that over on farmhouseonboone.com. Just search pie crust, or you can even Google sourdough pie crust farmhouse and it'll come up that way. What's cool about it is you can make it right now. So just put in some sourdough discard, some flour, some butter, ice water, all that good stuff. Actually, I don't think it even calls for ice water. No, it does not. And just make it right now. And then you could cut it in half and use the other pie crust, since it's a double recipe, put it in the fridge for a few days and it'll continue to ferment. So whether you want to do the long fermentation version or just the instant version, or on one recipe, cut it in half and do one way and one the other, that's totally fine. In fact, that's what we did. So this day we made one right away for our quiche. We have so many eggs that everything has to be eggs now. I've been making crepes like crazy, Dutch baby pancakes, quiches. But then the other one, she wrapped up, put it in the fridge, and we had that for a custard pie a few days later. So it was a little bit more sour at that point, but still really good. Actually, I lied. She divided it into 3 crusts. So 2 went into the quiche today, and then 1 is for the custard pie. It's technically a 2 crust recipe, but she made them really, really thin. So we actually ended up with 3. So in the bottom of these, I'm putting in some cheddar cheese and some feta cheese. Kind of just wanting to use up whatever cheese we have in that cheese drawer. Every once in a while, I like to take my cheese drawer, which I stock with a lot of cheese, and just empty it out. Use everything. Even if it doesn't normally call for that in a recipe, I will just, use it all up before restocking it. That way nothing goes bad. But I'm doing asparagus, mushrooms, and onions in a milk and egg mixture. Now, as you can see, my sourdough hot cross buns is getting more glossy, less shaggy throughout the day. I'm going to let that ferment until it starts to rise. It won't quite be double by the time I do the second ferment, if you will, the shaping and the rising, but that is the goal. You could let it go a lot longer. I just wanted to make these this afternoon, so I'm rushing the process along. So it just depends on how much fermentation you want and how in a hurry you are to actually eat the hot cross buns. We're in a hurry, so even though it's just probably risen by about 1/3, I'm going to divide this in 12, put them in a greased baking dish, then let them rise in a warm spot until doubled, and bake these today. I'm mixing up a little apricot jam with a bit of water to make a brushable consistency for a glaze on top of these sourdough hot cross buns. So after they bake, I will brush this over the warm hot cross buns and then make a little paste with some powdered sugar and milk to make a cross over the top. Now this time, I didn't want to use a ton of powdered sugar, but I wanted it to be a nice thick paste so that way I could make the cross. So I mixed in a little bit of flour as well, then put it into a Ziploc bag with the tip cut off, make some crosses on it, and some delicious hot cross buns were enjoyed. Actually, we had a storm this night. We had to go down to the basement. It ended up being no big deal where we were, but some places near us got hit pretty bad. So we enjoyed these hot cross buns down in our basement. I mean, our basement's a lot more comfortable now for storms than it was before we did our basement project. At least now it's clean. There's a little rug to sit on. So it was okay. It was definitely more comfortable than it's been in the past whenever we had to take kids down there. We live in Missouri, so we can get some pretty severe weather from time to time. I hope that you are enjoying spring wherever you are and making some fresh projects, fresh food, spring-inspired dishes. I'm going to pour myself a little glass of fermented water kefir and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.